How's it going, everybody? C-RadTV back here in another video. So, of course, I haven't done one of these Dream NASCAR Cup schedule videos in a while. I think the last time I did it was before, 2018. Back in 2017 when I did my Dream Cup schedule back for 2018. But for this one, I think we know what the schedule rumors going around now. And now that we're almost 2 months into the season, I think now is a good time to do a Dream video for the 2025 Cup schedule. So I'm going to go over this video. I'm going to give you my Dream Cup schedule for 2025 if I was running NASCAR and I was God Emperor for the Cup Series. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to give you my reasons for why I think each track should be where they are. So yeah, anyway, let's about get into it. But before we start, though, I'm going to lay out the basic ground rules for this video, for the schedule. So for this schedule, I have it being one race for each track each. So yeah, tracks like Daytona, Talladega, and Darlington are going to have one date each. Yes, I went there. Come at me. And also, the second condition is for any new tracks I throw on the schedule, they have to be race ready and have to be ready to race that now. So they have to be in a position where we could go to them tomorrow and they'd be ready to go. So yeah, tracks like Nashville Fairground and that new short track at Auto Club, they will not be on the schedule since they're nowhere near race ready. But yeah, anyway, now with all those ground rules out of the way, now let's jump right into the schedule. Also, for this schedule, I should also mention this real quick. There will be no Clash or no All-Star race on the schedule. Now, on this one, I am getting rid of the Clash and the All-Star race because, to be honest, the exhibition races kind of lost their luster for a long time ago. And honestly, I think the Cup Series would be better off getting rid of both of them. Because, honestly, all the Clash and the All-Star race have become just glorified test sessions for whatever shit NASCAR wants to throw out in the future. So in terms of Clash, I just have it being another extended off week for the off season. While for the All-Star race, I have that one being scrapped, and I have that being an additional off week right before the Coke 600. And I think that's a good call because a lot of drivers, fans, and teams have complained about the lack of off weeks on the schedule. So I think to solve one of those problems, I think you just get rid of the All-Star race, turn to an off week, and there you go. One problem solved. But one thing I would do for the off-season is I would bring back the preseason thunder testing at Daytona they did in the early to mid-2010s, but got rid of it for whatever fucking reason, because it's NASCAR and they're never consistent with anything. But I would bring back preseason thunder testing at Daytona. But anyway, now that I got that out of the way, now let's get into the real schedule. So, start off my dream schedule, of course, for race 1, we have, of course, the Daytona 500. I mean, it can't be any other race. I mean, the 500 being the season opener, that's pretty much tradition. It's tradition to have the 500 be the season opener. I mean, you can't disrespect that tradition. So, yeah. So, even though I got rid of some traditions, like 2 dates at some tracks, at a lot of tracks, though, one tradition I am going to keep, though, is the Daytona 500 as a season opener. You can't fucking get rid of Daytona as the season opener. It has to be the first race of the season. What other sport? No other sport except NASCAR kicks off their season with the biggest race of the season. So, 500's still my season opener because it's tradition. So then after the Daytona 500, we go right into the West Coast swing. So I'm respecting the tradition that I think should be the tradition, which is the West Coast swing goes right after the 500. So for race 2, I have Sonoma as the second race of the season. So we have an early season road course test right off the bat. I mean, I'll be honest, I think it's fucking criminal Sonoma isn't part of the West Coast swing. I feel like it should be part of the West Coast swing with Vegas and Phoenix. I mean, also this photo I have of Sonoma, this is what it's like in February, March, when the grass is green. Because every time we race there in June, the grass is fucking dead and it's kind of depressing. So yeah, honestly, I think this is a better sight to see than what we have in June, because June it's just depressing to look at. But yeah, I do some justice here, and I think Sonoma should be the second race of the season as part of the West Coast swing to kick it off. So then the rest of the West Coast swing plays out normally like it normally does. So we have race 3 being Las Vegas, And then we have race 4 of the season capping off the West Coast swing with the date in Phoenix. And since, of course, I have the 1 date per track thing, since you know Phoenix is here, that means you already know Phoenix won't be the season finale on my schedule. So yeah, we'll have a brand new track hosting the season finale. What track will that be? Tune in to the end of the video to find out. So yeah, race 3 and 4 are Vegas and Phoenix respectively to kick off to end the West Coast swing. So then, race 5, right after the West Coast swing, we have a stop in Austin, Texas at Circuit of the Americas for race 5. Like, I honestly like this road course. I don't know why many people hate it. I think a lot of reasons people hate this track is because everyone lets F1 live so rent-free in their head because F1 races here. But I think it's a good track to have early in the season for its 1 day, and plus it's like on the way back home from the West Coast swing. So there's that too. Like honestly, the track isn't the problem with the road course package. It's just the car itself struggles on road courses. Plus, everyone complains about road courses not having enough crashes because crashes equal entertainment. I mean, you already whined and cried about no crashes from last year with no stage cautions, and then you bring the stage cautions back, and oh yeah, nothing changed. So yeah, maybe be careful what you bitch about. It may come back to bite you in the ass. But yeah, I got COTA as race 5 on the schedule. So now, race 6 on the schedule, I have that being the 1 date for the season at Richmond. I'll be honest, I think Richmond would be better off as 1 date, especially with how much attendance issues they've had at Richmond. Like, I think Richmond would be better off at 1 date, and I think it should be early in the season. So yeah, this is the 1 date I have for Richmond, being right at race 6. So for race 7, I now got North Wilkesboro on the schedule. So I have North Wilkesboro finally getting a Cup points day. I'll be honest, I think the North Wilkesboro should be a Cup date. Like, there was a lot of support for it as the All-Star race. Even though the racing could have been better. I mean, the short track package sucks for the Cup Series. I mean, just take the diffuser off, increase the horsepower, and that should be a start to improve the short track package. Like, the track isn't the problem. It's the car itself is the problem for short tracks. Because we've seen how bad Richmond has been and how bad Martinsville has been. And for Bristol, the only way Bristol was good was bringing a tire that fucking got destroyed after 40 laps. And of course, some North Wilkesboro being repaved as well. But yeah, I think just improve the car itself and short track racing is going to be good again. But yeah, I got North Wilkesboro finally getting justice and getting a point state as race 7. So race 8 on the schedule would be our first of 2 international dates I have on the Cup schedule. And it's our first real new track on the schedule. I mean, some people say North Wilkesboro, but do we really count that since they've hosted the All-Star race 2 years in a row? But yeah, race 8, I have us going south of the border to Mexico at Autodrome Hermanos Rodriguez, which is that road course the F1 competes at, because there's really not that many interesting tracks to go to, so this is kind of the default selection. Like, if NASCAR's going to go to Mexico, I think most likely this is going to be the track. Plus, this track has hosted NASCAR races in the past, with them hosting Xfinity races throughout much of the mid to late 2000s, back when it was the Busch/Nationwide series. And it's also played host to the NASCAR Mexico Series once a year. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to go tip into the NASCAR Mexico market, because Mexico has quite a huge support for NASCAR, especially when they have the Mexico Series down south. So yeah, I think NASCAR finally will go international. I think an international Cup date in either Mexico or Canada, I think both are inevitable at this point. So I'd say 2025, I pushed in and say, hey, we go to Mexico in 2025. So yeah, I have Autodrome Hermano Rodriguez as race 8 on the schedule. So then race 9, I have another new track on the schedule, as we got another short track I'm going to throw on the schedule. As for this one, I got Pikes Peak getting race 9 of 36. So, for anyone that doesn't know, Pikes Peak, it's a 5/8 of a mile short track located outside Denver, Colorado, which is a market that NASCAR's been trying to look at for a couple years now. So I think, hey, why not go to Pikes Peak and go there? And expand to the Denver market as well. Plus, it's a track that the Truck Series used to run at back in the day as well. So, and I think it could be a good track for Cup too. I know the photo shows one grandstand. I mean, there's an easy way to fix that photo problem. I think what they could do for that is they could bring in other temporary grandstands like they did for Nashville. Because Nashville only has that main grandstand and then everything else are just small temporary ones to bring in more fans. But yeah, I think NASCAR, in my schedule, I have NASCAR expanding to the Denver market as well. To that Denver, Colorado market. And I think Pikes Peak would be a good choice right here. So for race 10, I have Gateway moving up to race 10. I think it should be a little bit earlier in the year. I think this is a good spot to put it in to replace the first Talladega race. As I think Talladega is honestly a lot better in the fall. Plus the Dega infield parties in the fall are a lot more fucking crazier in the fall. So I think have Dega later in the year. Plus also with me only having 3 super speedway dates on the schedule, I want to spread all 3 out evenly throughout different points of the season. See, I got Gateway moving up to race 10 on the season. So now the next 3 races kind of play out the same as they do in real life. So we got race 11 once again being Dover right after Gateway. And then we got race 12 of the season being the one and only stop this season in the year at Kansas Speedway. And of course, to cap it off, for race 13, we have the yearly race on Memorial Day weekend. That's on the same day as the Indy 500, aka the greatest day in racing. As we have the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte, which, I mean, that's tradition to have it be the same day as the Indy 500, weather permitting. So yeah, I mean, you can't fuck with that tradition. But yeah, I got the Coke 600 on that day for that weekend again because it has to be that weekend. And that's the only race at Charlotte this year. Yes, I really went there. Now, in terms of the replacement for the Charlotte Roval, I do have an interesting substitution for it. To where really anyone in that area loses nothing with it. You'll have to tune in to see what I mean. So now race 14 on the schedule. I have another new track on the schedule. And this one we head out to the Pacific Northwest. As we head out to Portland International Raceway for race 14 at Portland. Of course, this is that road course up in Portland that Xfinity has competed at the last couple years. It's also a track that ARCA West has competed at too, along with IndyCar as well. So yeah, I think the Cup Series, I think it's overdue for the Cup Series to go to Portland. Like, I think it's time for Cup Series to go expand to the Pacific Northwest. And that market has been pretty good and has embraced Xfinity pretty well. So I'm going to say, I think it's the Cup Series time to head out to Portland, head out to the Pacific Northwest. And run a date at Portland International Raceway. So I got Portland as race 14. So now, race 15 of the season, we have a short track date up in Iowa for race 15. So it's Iowa's effectively where it is normally on the schedule, like where it is this year. So yeah, nothing really changed with Iowa there. I mean, it's great that Iowa's finally get a Cup date. Long overdue. So race 16 of the season, I have NASCAR returning to Road America and heading back to the Wisconsin market. I'll be honest, I think it was a mistake NASCAR leaving Road America at all. So I think NASCAR should go back to Road America. Plus the fan support there has been very great there. I mean, you had like 150,000 fans there the last couple years. Like, fan support has been off the charts for Wisconsin. Like, I think it's criminal that NASCAR looked at that fan support for Road America and decided that wasn't good enough. Like, I think that was fucking criminal. But I have Road America returning to the Cup schedule at race 16. So then race 17 of season, we have the once-a-year date at Loudon, New Hampshire, which is about where it normally is on the schedule anyway. It is usually right around this spot, so nothing really changes with New Hampshire here at race 17. And then for race 18, we have the big one, which is our second international date. And I think this, out of both international dates, I think this is the most long overdue one. And that is a race in Canada in Montreal. I'll be honest, for the Canada race, it was either going to be Montreal or Canadian Tire Motorsports Park up in Bowmanville, Ontario. But let's be honest and not kid ourselves. Montreal is well ahead of Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in terms of its track facility and everything. Plus, Xfinity has hosted absolute banger races every year they ran there from 2007 to 2012. So many great moments happened there. Even when the Canada Series, formerly the Penny Series, ran at Montreal, they had some great moments there too. I mean, you could make the same argument for trucks every year up to 2019. For trucks, had banger moments too at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Like, honestly, out of both those tracks, really hard to pick one, but I think if you gotta go with one, it's gotta be Montreal. And I have this taking place around the 4th of July long weekend. Now, before everyone goes to the comments and freaks out at me for this, hear me out. Because America's 4th of July long weekend, it usually always coincides with Canada's long holiday weekend for their national holiday, which is Canada Day. And I'll be honest, if you're going to have a race in Canada, it has to be on Canada's biggest national holiday of the year. Their biggest holiday of the year. So it has to be on that day, weekend. And yeah, and even in Canada, Montreal, you can still embrace the 4th of July American traditions there too. Because there are most likely going to be a lot of American fans that make that trip too. But yeah, I have Montreal and I have Canada finally get an overdue cup date at race 18. So now race 19, we have our second super speedway race of the season, and that being Atlanta Motor Speedway. So I have Atlanta being the midway point of the year. Like I said, with the only 3 super speedway dates on the schedule, I wanted to spread all 3 out evenly. So you have 5 to 500 open the season. I have Dega near the end of the year, so that means I have Atlanta being around mid-season. Honestly, I feel like Atlanta feels right at race 19, being around the midway point of the year or the start of the second half of the season. But yeah, I have Atlanta race 19. So now the next 2 races on the schedule are pretty much played out exactly as they are normally in real life. So race 20 of the season, of course, we have the Brickyard 400, which ironically, that's where it normally is every year, outside of when it was the road course and when it was that regular season finale. So tradition right here. And then right after race 21 on the season, we have the once-a-year stop at Pocono Raceway, that's usually been tradition for the longest time, was having Pocono right after Indianapolis. Like, usually those 2 races usually coincide right with each other. So right after Pocono, we did have a little Midwest swing up in the Midwest. So for this one, I have race 22 being Chicagoland Speedway. Now for this one, I was originally going to put the Chicago Street Course in there, but I got to put some realism on the schedule. And I'm going to be realistic. I think 2024 is going to be the last year to run Chicago Street Course. I don't think it's nothing to do with the track. I think NASCAR is going to get forced out due to everyone's favorite subject, politics. Yeah, once again, politics ruining shit in racing. But yeah, I think NASCAR is going to get forced out by politics. And hey, if it happens, not the worst case in the world, scenario in the world, because Chicagoland is my plan B option. We always have plan B. And plus, we've seen how good the next-gen cars race on intermediate tracks, except Texas. And we've seen how good Chicagoland has produced some pretty underrated racing. The last couple of years it was around before it got taken off the schedule due to the pandemic. Especially with that 550 garbage we ran for 2019 as well. It had a pretty underrated race as well. But yeah, I think you add a track that's produced great underrated racing and a track that's produced great on intermediate racing, on intermediate tracks. I think you mix both together. I think you got a really good race that could happen here at Chicagoland. So yeah. So yeah, I got Chicagoland race 22. And then race 23, nothing really changes here. I have my home track of Michigan International Speedway at race 23. And then to cap off the Midwest swing, we have another new track on the schedule. I think it's a date track that's long overdue in a state that needs to have a cup race. I have race 2436 taking place at Mid-Ohio. That road course that IndyCar races at every year, and a road course that Xfinity used and trucks used to race at as well. Like, I think Mid-Ohio is long overdue for a date. I think the state of Ohio is due for a cup date. Like, kind of criminal that they left there this year. Like, I think it's a great track. It's a good facility. It's produced some great moments, especially in Xfinity as well. You know, I think it's time to go to Mid-Ohio, and I think that's a good track to go to for Mid-Ohio right there. So I have Mid-Ohio as race 24. So for race 25, nothing changes here. Race 25 still remains Watkins Glen at this slot. So yeah, Watkins Glen remains race 25 on the schedule, just like in real life. Now for race 26, I have this being another new track on the schedule. As for this one, I got us heading back to Georgia for a stop at Road Atlanta. A road course that's more famous with IMSA, if anything. I mean, I believe NASCAR used to run here back in the day, but it's been a long time. I mean, Road Atlanta, if you've seen the IMSA races or played any of the Forza games, it's not a bad facility. I mean, the only thing it's been famous for NASCAR-wise was in 2011 when Brad Keselowski broke his ankle at this track, and that helped kickstart Keselowski's career. And probably was the main catapult to him winning the championship in 2012. But that's an interesting story there. But yeah, just, I think this is a good option there. Like, originally, I was either going to do a date at either Europe or Brazil here. But I'll be honest, I don't think NASCAR's ready just yet to go there. I don't think we should go too overboard on the international dates. I think we should let it come in naturally instead of trying to force it down immediately. Like, I'll be honest, I do want a Cup Series to go to Brazil and Europe at some point. I mean, with Brazil, the best option would be Interlagos, where F1 competes at, which has produced actually pretty good F1 racing for F1 standards. And for Europe, well, Europe, it's very hard to pick a track in Europe. But for now, I have Road Atlanta on the schedule until I feel like we're ready to go with either Brazil or Europe. So yeah, now we get into the last 10 races of the season. So for race 27, we have a course tradition on Labor Day weekend, which would be the Southern 500. So yeah, course tradition, you can't fuck with Darlington, the Lady in Black on Labor Day weekend. That's tradition at this point. And also, I should have mentioned Road Atlanta would also be the last road course race on my schedule for the season. So yeah, the last 10 races are all oval tracks. And also, some of you be wondering, where do I have the chase slash playoffs begin at this point of the schedule? Well, that's the neat part about the schedule. There is no chase slash playoffs. The reason why is because the chase slash playoffs are a fucking stupid and dumb and illegitimate way of crowning a champion, and I'm not fucking doing that shit because the chase slash playoffs don't fucking belong in motorsports. Honestly, fuck the chase slash playoffs. Get rid of it. Season-long points format for the win. And anyone that thinks the chase format is a legitimate way of crowning a champion is not a true motorsports fan, and they're an entertainment fan. But anyway, now that little ran out of the way, yeah, Darlington Southern 500 as the Labor Day race is tradition, so nothing changes here at race 27. So for race 28 on the schedule, I have a brand new track on the schedule, and that being the return of the Milwaukee Mile. As I think the Milwaukee Mile should get a cup date, 100%. I mean, there's been some great Xfinity races and moments in Xfinity back when it raced there when it was the Busch Nationwide Series. Truck Series has had some good moments there too. Even ARCA and ARCA East have competed there. Even IndyCar's going back there. So I think the Cup Series should cash in on it. And I think Wisconsin should get a second day, and I think Milwaukee Mile would be a good choice for it. Like, I think honestly it's criminal Milwaukee doesn't have a cup date. See, I got Milwaukee Mile, a track with a lot of tradition. I think it finally gets a cup date on my schedule. So I got Milwaukee at race 28. So now race 29, nothing changes here. It's, of course, the tradition, the Bristol night race. Like, your Bristol night race in September. Honestly, I think it's been better in September than it is in August because it's a lot cooler than it is in the summertime. But yeah, Bristol at race 29. I think it's a good choice here. Bristol, nothing changes here. Like, the only race at Bristol should be the night race. Because it's the only race fucking Bristol markets. Like, the only reason they marketed the shit out of the spring race this year was because of how many people bitched and complained and wanted it back. Like, if people didn't bitch and complain and want it back, Bristol wouldn't even give a fuck about that race. Like, usually Bristol throws all their eggs in the one basket. Plus, I think there'd be a lot more prestige going to Bristol once a year just for the night race. So I got Bristol at race 29. So now for race 30, this one may be controversial because this track isn't the most fan favorite track in the world, but I'm willing to give this track a chance, and that being Kentucky Speedway. Now for Kentucky, the main reason I have it here is because, like I mentioned with Chicagoland, this next-gen car is raced really good at intermediate tracks. I mean, the last 2 years we ran at Kentucky, you had two pretty good finishes. I mean, 2019, you had the battle with the Busch brothers, Bean and Bane to the line. And then 2020, you had Cole Custer's 4-wide pass on the outside to take the win, to get his one and only Cup Series win. Like, Kentucky has produced some pretty good moments. You know, so, hey, I'm willing to give this car a chance on Kentucky. I think it could possibly produce a good race with this car, with this next-gen car. So I'm willing to give Kentucky a shot. Plus, Kentucky's been taken care of pretty well ever since we stopped going there after 2020. So, yeah, I'm willing to give Kentucky a chance. So I got Kentucky at race 30. So, of course, race 31 on the schedule. Nothing changes here, of course. It's Talladega. I mean, it's tradition with Talladega being at this point of the season in October. Plus, the Dega infield parties in the fall are way more lit and crazy and more fucked up than the ones in the springtime. Like, usually, anytime I get videos of the Dega infield party, it's always been the fall race. It's never been the spring race. Especially with everyone's obsession there with Butthole now. So, yeah. See, I got race 31 at Dega. And no, I don't want to see anyone's butthole right now. We're moving on to the next track now. Now, for race 32, I have a return of a fan favorite track, and I think it's overdue now, and I think it's time to come back here. Race 32, I have Rockingham Speedway, The Rock, returning to the Cup Series schedule. And I have this track taking the place of the Charlotte Roval track. No, I am not in favor of the Charlotte getting the second date and going back to the Oval track. Like honestly, for this, it's either Rockingham or the Charlotte Roval. And honestly, like I mentioned before, I want to do one date per track, so Rockingham gets a choice here. Plus, for anyone that wants to argue this, let me just say this here. Having Rockingham replace the Charlotte Roval date and taking a date away from Charlotte, the North Carolina racing fans lose fucking nothing with this move. Because the date remains in North Carolina, and you bring a fan-favorite track back from the dead. So yeah, Rockingham, I think it's time to bring Rockingham back to the Cup schedule. So I got Rockingham as race 32 on the schedule. So then race 33, I have Texas right here on the schedule. I mean, I don't want it to be on a schedule, but to be honest, I couldn't find a good track to replace it. Like, I couldn't decide on a good one, so Texas just happens to slot down here as a default selection. Like I mentioned before, I would probably swap it out for either a date in either Brazil or Europe, whatever I don't have replacing Road Atlanta. But I feel like it's too soon to go to Europe and Brazil. I think you start the international expansion just with Canada and Mexico first. And depending on how both those weekends go, if they end up being successful, then I will possibly open up the door for either Brazil or Europe in the future. But yeah, for now I got Texas on the schedule. Plus, they're most likely going to reconfigure and repave the track again, making this Frankenstein of a track even more uglier than it already is. Like, Jesus Christ, this track has gone through more reconfigurations than Madonna's gone through plastic surgeries. Good Lord. And we're going to talk about that more in the race recap this weekend for Texas. So the next two races on the schedule, I have nothing changing here. So, yeah, controversially, race 34, I have Homestead remaining at race 34. It's the third last race of the season. Now, for anyone wondering why I don't have Homestead as the finale, hear me out when I get to which track I have for the season finale, and I'll explain why. So, race 34, I have Homestead. And then race 35, the second last race of the season, I got Martinsville Speedway as the second last race of the year. I think Martinsville is the perfect second last race of the season. I think it was a great move putting Martinsville as the second last race of the year. All I say to NASCAR is keep Martinsville at this spot. Don't change a damn thing with it. Keep it here. So I got Martinsville race 35. And now finally, for race 36 on the schedule, the season finale, I have Nashville Super Speedway as the season finale. Now, for some of you that want to question why I don't have Homestead here, well, that's pretty simple. Because Homestead is everybody's choice for the season finale. And I can understand why. It's a fan favorite track, the best mile and a half on the schedule, plus tradition. But honestly, I want it to be different from everybody else. Like, if Homestead ends up becoming the finale, I won't be pissed or too heated about it. I mean, it's alright. I mean, for my schedule, if you really like it, but you want Homestead as a finale, just have Homestead and Nashville swap spots, and then it perfectly balances out. But for Nashville, I want to be bold and different from everybody else and separate myself. Plus, I kind of want something different for the finale. And I feel like Nashville would be a good choice for the finale. I mean, it's produced great racing. Ever since we started coming to Nashville, we've had some pretty good races at this track. Plus, I think it makes a lot more sense to go to Nashville for the finale than Homestead, considering that NASCAR literally has the year-end banquet in downtown Nashville. And plus, Nashville being a booming market to it overall. So, I think Nashville is the right choice to become the season finale. Like, if it's Homestead, I want to be against it. Like, honestly, I'll be honest to God's truth, Homestead was my second choice for the finale. It was my finale was either going to be Homestead or Nashville Super Speedway. And I think Nashville, I honestly wanted to go with Nashville because here's an interesting fact. Every time we've stopped going to a track for the finale, that track has never hosted the finale ever again. Atlanta's never hosted the finale since we stopped going there. Neither has Ontario or Riverside. That track no longer exists now. So on and so forth. So yeah, I think Nashville would be a good choice for the season finale. I think it makes a lot more sense to go to Nashville. So I have Nashville as my season finale for race 36. But yeah, anyway, that wraps it up on my Dream 2025 Cup schedule. You know, I think the schedule I have, I tried to include more track diversity, try to bring in more tracks on the schedule. Try to give more tracks a chance to host a Cup date. Because I think there are a lot of tracks out there that deserve a Cup date. It even tried to include some international dates in there too. Just, try to include some schedule diversity and try and take some dates away from tracks. Because to be honest, all the tracks that have 2 dates on the schedule, they honestly don't really need them. And honestly, anyone that thinks that they do need them, honestly, are probably just drinking that My Tradition juice too much. But yeah, also for the schedule, I tried to respect as many traditions as I possibly could in here, while also at the same time trying to create possibly some even new traditions I think fans can embrace in the long run. But yeah, of course, I mean, there are probably going to be a lot of people that disagree with it just because of some tracks not having 2 dates or certain tracks being left off or maybe even too many road courses, even though there's like only 9 to 36, like... For everyone that hates the road courses, there's only 9 on the schedule. You still get your oval tracks for 27 to 36 races, including your 3 super speedways. So honestly, you already get your weekend 27 to 36 times. Let somebody else have theirs for once and stop being a bunch of greedy fucks for once. But yeah, anyway though, I think that wraps it up here, What are your thoughts on the schedule, and what do you think I could have done differently, Just let me know. But anyway, I imagine everybody else's dream schedules will look a lot different, though. But yeah, I tried my best with this, with the 1 track per date rule that I've laid out there in tracks that are ready to race at now. But anyway, that'll wrap it up here. That's all I gotta say. Hope everyone's a great day, and I'll see you all whatever I make next. I'm out.